Good morning.
Good morning.
What a beautiful morning it is too, isn't it? Oh, so great. Well, we're blessed to have Susan Considine back with us today. She's so, like I've said before, told you before, there's three people I have the most amazing respect for who are into A Course in Miracles. One was Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut, who I studied with at UT of the Palm Beaches, and who actually walked on the moon. Well, he walked on the moon knowing that that we're all in this together. That the Holy Instant is what it's all about, that forgiveness is the important thing. And so Edgar Mitchell is an amazing teacher of A Course in Miracles. And Marianne Williamson is, of course, he's pretty good at it. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And Susan Considine is really, I've seen her teach classes, and she's just so good. She's a teacher for me in A Course in Miracles. We're blessed to have her back again today. So, without further ado, Susan Considine, come on.
Good morning.
Good
Morning.
I'm going to spare everybody a bad joke this morning.
Aww.
Unless, John, you want to step back in.
I'll think
Everybody wants to make sure that they come for John's blowout Sunday. I don't know if he's told you, he's saving all the bad jokes in the universe for his very last Sunday. He's going to go through them one by one until nobody's left in the room. So definitely keep that on your books. Okay, so the first time that I came, I was really talking about the spiritual concept of let it begin with me, and also that our perception is what creates our experience. I was drawing from Al-Anon, from A Course in Miracles. Last week, I was really talking about creating a gap between our first thought and our second thought. And I threw a laundry list at you because I wanted to make sure everybody could come home with something. So I'm not going to use this board too much, just a little bit this morning. So here's our first thought. And our second thought. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
All right. So what we were talking about is this first thought might be coming from a trigger, right? This is our ego consciousness, what the Course in Miracles talks about. This belief that we're this separate mortal body that's at risk. The Buddhists call this the identity view. The identity view, again, I'm the center of the universe, and the rest of the world is how it relates to me. This is what we call right mind, or the at-one-ment view, where ourselves connected. The other difference here is this is what we might call Stuart Smalley's carpet view, versus putting on slippers, right? We'll make them bunny slippers. This is I'm going to put on slippers. This is, I want the world to go according to my script. I want to carpet the whole world. The other way to look at it, too, is this is let it begin with the world. This is let it begin with me. So, again, we were trying to look at last week how to get across this gap. Course in Miracles talks about, I brought in some frames, there's only two ways of seeing things. Love or fear. Fear, love. And again, this may be coming from fear, and this is love. So how are we going to get across this gap? So another thing that I also talked about is the 3 A's. And I'm trying to look for things that are easy to remember, especially if you're not taking notes, that you can address later. The 3 A's, and we have awareness, acceptance, and action. And again, I brought that up because oftentimes we're trying to leap over this gap of not only our awareness, I apologize for my writing, but we're trying to leap over acceptance. Something comes into our awareness, and we want to jump to taking action without just sitting with it, being with it. So if we have come to be habitually reactive, we're not going to have very much space between our first and second thought. We say we're responsible for our first thought, or I'm sorry, we're not responsible for our first thought, but we are responsible for our second thought. Did I say that right? But if we're habitually reactive, we might just be constantly in ego thinking. We're never creating any space there so that we can actually become responsible. We're just on a hamster wheel of reaction. And we might be able to recognize when we feel that way, right? That's one of the things I want to talk about today, is recognizing when we're in an ego state. Because that awareness is the first step in starting to exercise a spiritual muscle. Otherwise, you're just going to be entertained hopefully entertained, for a short time on a Sunday, and you'll go back to you having discord with your spouse or your boss or your employees. So this is what we're looking for, is to build this spiritual muscle. So we're going to talk about that. Again, acceptance, another way to look at acceptance is a loosening effect. We're trying to get some space again between our ego thoughts and get to our spiritual self. I have a great Buddhist teacher that I watch on YouTube, Ajahn Brahm, and he talks about becoming a bottomless garbage can. That we receive everything, but we hold nothing. We're coming back to, this is what you would call, your second thought is new thought. We come from a new thought tradition here, that we always have the chance to begin again with a new thought. But it's exercising that spiritual muscle so we can get that space in there, and we're not running down, again, like we said, that long, dark alley of our trigger with no exit. So, I talked about last week with awareness. Sometimes when we're really triggered, and it's not always upset, it could be depression, right? It could be resignation about something. One of the things that we can do is take a physical inventory of how we're feeling. Sometimes that starts to loosen things up. Physical inventory, emotional inventory. Abraham, I know John talks a lot about Abraham here. They have an emotional scale. And they say, don't try and do a quantum leap. You know, sometimes we don't try any harder because I can't get from being pissed off to happy. And they're saying, don't worry about getting from pissed off to happy. Go from pissed off to discouragement. Go from pissed off to disappointed. Go from disappointment to hopefulness. Then go from hopefulness to passion. Let's not try and take quantum leaps. We're trying to build this spiritual muscle up gradually. We're trying to develop a new spiritual habit. We're not going to go run a marathon tomorrow. We're going to start building up mile after mile. Like I said, we often want to start practicing these principles with less challenging people. The most challenging people are going to throw us off our mark too fast. Okay. Another thing I do with awareness sometimes, I told you in the 12-step traditions I was in Al-Anon, we start doing an inventory of ourselves, a fearless moral inventory. And there are times when some things come up where I open the closet door and I want to close the closet door. I don't want to look back in it again. And so sometimes our first thought in response to this might be forgiveness of ourselves. One thing I'll do sometimes to make it lighthearted when I see something, like, oh my God, did I really say that to that person? I was a witch, but substitute the W with a B. So I'll go, busted, just something to lighten it up. Busted, and then like the Buddhists say, just be with it. That's another thing I'll tell myself. Be with it, be with it, be with it. Because one trap that we get in that puts us back in the hamster wheel and not moving over to this self is we see a mistake and we identify with it. And then we keep making ourselves wrong in that space rather than moving again to forgiveness, where we're seeing at one mint. We're seeing like the prayer that I read the first week, where I'm looking for gratitude toward my brother. As I see him, I see myself. As I think of him, I think of myself. As I treat him, I treat myself. Everything that I look at in my brother, I'm strengthening in myself. We're starting to see that connection there. So again, after we get this awareness, here's where spiritual practice comes in. Before we sit with acceptance, we want to start looking at reframing how we were looking at things. The ego always comes from a space of, I was at risk, somebody else did something wrong, I did something wrong, there's someone to blame, someone's guilty, and we want to shift to, again, which frame are we in? There's only 2 frames. Again, that's why I love Course in Miracles. Everybody thinks Course in Miracles is a scary book. It's thick. It's got lots and lots of words. Take a peek at this. Lots of words, no pictures. But I'll tell you, it's all saying the same thing. It comes back to something very simple. Love or fear. It's not a little bit of love. I'm kind of loving. I'm trying to be loving. I'm only a little bit afraid. Nope, separate. Love or fear. Love or fear. So again, when we start this acceptance process, we want to start holding up a spiritual frame. That's the function of prayer. The function of prayer is to start giving us a new context, almost like new braces on our teeth, because this human brain, it's been around, has developed its own triggers, its own ways of seeing, that usually doesn't get me to a peace of mind state. So last week when I was throwing you the laundry list, we can always use readings. We can use the Al-Anon slogans to set our intention, prayer, setting an intention. Let it begin with me, live and let live. In my defenselessness, my safety lies. We can do, I also mentioned what we call ego diffusers, right? Watching comedy, being lighthearted, setting ourselves up that way. Exercising our physical body. So I want to share one thing today. Again, it's another way of identifying our state of mind, being okay with wherever we are, starting at anger. Remember, not taking the quantum leap. If we're angry and we're pissed off, let's acknowledge that. Then we can move forward. So this framework that I'm going to teach you this morning is not only a good way to identify your state of mind, but also it gives you guideposts again for loosening up resistance. Acceptance, think of acceptance, boy, that's really poorly written there. Think of acceptance as loosening resistance. I often resist the word acceptance because I really don't want to accept that. But loosening resistance, okay, I can live with that. So, and also this thing that I want to teach you is really a good foundation for spiritual practice, for spiritual inquiry as you're learning new things. I can tell you when I started with Course in Miracles, it was way out there for me. I didn't accept it right away at all. So, okay, here it is. And so what I'm telling you this morning, I don't have a good eraser, comes from a book called, can you help me erase this, John? It'll work, you just need to rub it. I just want to keep talking. Okay. This comes from a book, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Radical Forgiveness by Colin Tipping. And this is a great thing to teach in itself. So I don't want to diminish the impact, the value of this whole book, but I'm just going to steal one thing from it this morning, but I wanted to tell you where it comes from. So he is heavily influenced by A Course in Miracles. 2. Did it come on? Thank you. So, when we're approached with any new spiritual idea, so also when we're trying to reframe our experience using a prayer, using a slogan, we want to acknowledge where we are in relation to that. So, and I'm teaching you this too, again, because it's easy to remember. You don't have to have it in your pocket. And my sister and I took a class in forgiveness from a great local teacher, Charles Thomas. If any of you know him, I'd like to give a quick shout out to him. And when we looked at this framework, we call it Wo Su. That's how I remember it. I'm not making fun of Asian languages. I'm just using the rhythm of that language to help me remember, or Wu Sao. So what Colin Tipping does is, as you present yourself to these new frameworks that might feel like braces on our teeth or braces on our legs, the ego's teeth, we want to identify where we are in relation to it. So, for instance, I'll just read one of them, which is tied to A Course in Miracles. I now realize that what I judge in others represents what I hate about myself and have repressed and projected onto them. Remember, A Course in Miracles says what we hold in our mind is what we're going to see. So, as we read any of these, as you approach any spiritual lesson, you can ask yourself, am I unwilling? Am I skeptical? Am I open? Or am I willing? So you can see there's a loosening effect here. But what I love about this is that we give ourselves permission first to be wherever we are. Sometimes we can't even get to a place of willingness because we don't allow ourselves to first be unwilling or to be skeptical. So, again, I'm big on visual metaphors. I gave you some in the past talks. Like, for instance, skeptical. When I look at that, I talk to you about the Buddhist concept of having a position, but not holding it. So, I have my position, but I'm not holding it. I'm not holding it so that there's no other possibility. So I have an image of I'm still in my bird cage, but I've opened the door. I'm still sitting in my position. I haven't totally given up, but I'm open to a new possibility. Open could be, I talked about the gift of the I don't know mind. Open is, I don't know what it looks like, but I'm holding the position that there is something for me at the end of here. I am going to get something out of this. There is more than the suffering I have sat with for myself. Willing. I've got a friend who always says, I'm in, right? So, again, what I wanted to bring today is just getting us to be able to identify our physical, emotional, and mental state in any given moment. Because that's the only way that we can actually start moving back to first thought, second thought. So, can you recognize when you're in these different states? Do you know the physical sensations? Unwilling, for me, I know my shoulders are tense all the time. There's some unwillingness there. What about when we're open and willing? Don't we have a different sense of ourselves? We're probably breathing a lot more oxygen in. What other emotions, mental states, what would be the words that we're using in these different states? Anybody want to shout any out? Unwilling, skeptical, open.
Okay.
Okay.
I'd shout something out. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Is it openness? Yeah. Well, and here's another thing. Here's another practice you can do just to start getting familiar with these. We talked about the gift of the I don't know mind. Just practice saying I don't know in each state. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. You see that loosening that happens? Just practicing this. So, again, we're looking to let it begin with me. We're talking about making that shift because we want to we want to start working at the level of cause, which is thought and perception. We're often focused on the level of effects, the world. We're back to the little guy with his carpet, right, versus the guy with his bunny slippers. We're putting on slippers rather than trying to carpet the world. Now, the last thing I want to say about it, I wish we could go back to the little men. Part of why we want to start doing this, exercising this spiritual muscle, being able to start getting a link between our first thought and our second thought, between our ego mind and our spiritual mind, because until we have some resiliency there, until we have some muscle there, muscle memory, that's when we can move toward intentional thought. That's when we can move to this law of manifestation that we teach here. That's when we can move to the higher self. And guess what? That's where we get away from focusing on all of our problems, what Al-Anon calls false humility, and start heading toward the love, creativity, humor, harmony, connectedness. When we start getting some skill between that first thought and our second thought, that's when we can spin off into intentional thought and be the creative, manifest actors that we're meant to be. So I'm just going to sum up again here. What we want to do is to start acknowledging where we are and just letting it be okay. That doesn't mean if you're angry, you're going to put that anger out on other people. You need to take responsibility for that and realize it's yours. And then we need to acknowledge our progress and practice in less challenging places. Okay? So we're back to keep it simple. Practice this. It's, you know, I don't know how you feel about this love and fear. Like it's only 2. Where are you on the scale? But just sit with it. Play with it like a game. Charles Thomas, the one I told you about who started whose forgiveness workshop I took, he says, no model is true. Some are useful. Right? No model's true. Some are useful. Just try it on. Try it on this week. So, have any of you heard of Buddhist climate control? Buddhist climate control. When it's hot, keep a cool head. When it's cool, keep a warm heart. And that's where I'll leave you with today. Thank you.